Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Father Ken.
And I'm Sister Ashley.
And let's talk horror.
So today we're doing our Didn't See That Coming on Pray for the Devil.
This is a movie that took us both by surprise. I went into this movie expecting just a typical Exorcist movie. That's not what we got. But before we get started, we do want to give a trigger warning. If you are sensitive to images of child abuse, parental abuse, this may not be the episode for you. So there are scenes of that in the film. We just wanted to put that out there beforehand so you kind of had that warning. So continue with caution if that's something that bothers you. Would you like to get started, my love?
Absolutely. So movie begins. A little girl, she's praying as her mother is knocking on the door, calling her name Annie, saying, "Sweetheart, let me in." Annie continues to pray. Mother's getting louder and more aggressive, more violent. She starts slamming her head on the door, saying, "Annie, let me in." It pans over and Annie is now Anne. And she's an adult now, and she is going to school to become a nun. And she is explaining to her psychiatrist all the things that she went through, some of the abusive things that she went through as a child. Anne told Dr. Peters, as her psychiatrist, that sometimes her mother would be her mother, and then other times she would hurt her, and it was like she was somebody else. She believes her mom wasn't just mentally ill, but she was possessed. So Dr. Peters, she pretty much believes that all possessions can be explained away by mental health. So she's, kind of explaining, reasoning with her what could have really been going on.
So Anne is studying at the exorcism school to become a nurse. That's her thing right now, that she's going under the guise of becoming a nurse. As she's doing her rounds on her patients, she goes and sees a little girl who is brought in by her mother that thinks that she is possessed. Anne connects with the little girl. Her name's Natalie. We get a little back and forth about nougat at this part. What is nougat? I don't know. Delicious.
Delicious.
That's what it is. So Natalie shows her a picture. And Anne's like, "Oh, that's a beautiful dog." And she's like, "It's a train." She's like, "Oh, well, it's a beautiful
Sounds like your
train
drawing.
then." Later that night in her dorm room, Anne is having a flashback of her mom violently brushing her hair with a comb, a wooden comb. Another scene that's hard to watch, as you're sitting there watching it. Child abuse is another hard one. So watching, her getting violently... her hair brushed is very hard. Anne gets up to shut her window. When she sees Natalie in the reflection, she turns around and looks back, and there's nobody there.
She sees a shadow of feet outside of her door, so she goes and opens her door, but no one's there. She does down the hall hear a door shut, though.
Someone was just standing outside her door and ran.
She was like, "Bye." So the next day, she's doing her rounds again when she hears an infant crying, and she looks in that direction, sees nothing, and this is when Natalie kind of scares her from behind, pops out. And she's like, "How did you get out of your room?" And Natalie's like, "I don't like my room very much."
Okay, but how did you get out of there?
How did you get out, though? So she's like, "I was trying to find you." So Natalie convinces her to go back to her room. She takes her back to her room. This is when she's walking downstairs, and she hears this demonic voice calling, "Annie, I'm here for you." Freaks her out. So at the bottom of the stairs, there's this door. She walks in, and there's a bunch of priests in training. They're watching an Exorcist movie, and this is when Father Quinn, he's teaching the class about the girl's exorcism. Her name was Elena, and she was in her terminal stages of...
And very quietly snuck into the class.
Yes, so she obviously isn't supposed to be there because nuns, will never do exorcisms.
Right. So that's their whole thing, and she's like, "I don't care. This is." So she snuck in very quietly to sit down and watch.
But Father Quinn, he did notice her, but didn't say anything. He just, kind of watched her sneak in.
Right.
So he's teaching them about this exorcism, how Elena was in her terminal stages. And he's kind of talking about how demons are the devil's foot soldiers. They know no fatigue. They know no fear. They have no doubt. The devil will try to distract you in any way possible. The only thing that's going to help you is the word of God. It's your most powerful weapon.
And at this point, Sister Anne starts to research Elena's case. She's obviously very enthralled, very eager to learn about this. but she's not allowed to get to the restricted files. Once you go to the Vatican, your stuff becomes restricted at that point, and a normal nun cannot access those files. Anne is talking to Dr. Peters, and she tells her that her mother used to talk about a voice inside of her. It wanted Anne because she was one of God's chosen soldiers. So, we've already heard the priest talking about it. Now we're hearing Anne talk about it as well. Sister Euphemia catches up to Anne and Father Quinn. She tells them that Anne shouldn't be in these classes because nuns can't perform exorcisms. Father Quinn tells Sister Euphemia that she just wants to learn.
But Sister Euphemia, she's just trying to protect Anne from, because she's never going to be able to do any exorcism. So there's no reason.
In her mind, she's doing what's right.
Yeah.
She's not trying to be an old Betty or anything like that. Like, she's really trying to do the right thing in her mind.
So Anne, she's giving one of her patients, Clark, a sponge bath. This is when Clark, he's an older gentleman, he starts humming the song that her mother used to sing to her as a child.
When she would violently brush her hair and stuff like that. She had this little melody that she would hum.
Yes. So she looks at him and she's like, how do you know that song? When Clark, he turns around and says, like, in this demonic voice, we've been waiting for you. And she is trying to get out of the room at this point, but she can't get out. So Clark, he grabs her and he starts like dancing with her around the room, and his tongue is protruding out of his mouth. She's trying to like get away from him, and she pushes him and he falls down on the ground. So the head priest, Cardinal Matthews, he's watching the playback of this in his room, and he tells Father Quinn and Sister Euphemia that the demon went after her without any cause.
Right.
So,
and this is one of those things where Sister Euphemia is still kind of like, we got to get back to work. You know what I mean? Like, at this point, she thinks it's in her best interest if maybe she gets sent back.
Yeah.
We got to get back to work, send her back to the nun reform, pretty much is what it is. St. Mary's, but Father Quinn wants to keep her there because it doesn't matter. It's one of those things where the demon's going to follow her.
Right.
And if this demon is strictly attached to her, sending her there puts everybody there in danger too. Why don't we keep her close?
Yeah, and, I can teach her some things to save, help her.
Right. And Sister Euphemia says that it's unprecedented. We can't have a woman doing this type of thing. We can't have a nun doing, a priest work. Father Quinn wants to teach her just enough to keep her safe, is what he says. So Father Quinn tells him that the relationship is personal. Sister Euphemia says we all have a personal relationship with God, Father. And Father Quinn comes back with, this wasn't a relationship with God. It's a relationship with the devil.
So Anne starts attending Father Quinn's classes. Some of the men, when she walks in, they seem like they have a problem with it, kind of like giving her dirty looks and her just looking like, you got a problem, bro?
Right.
So Father Quinn tells the class that they need to do an exorcism on Natalie, the little girl, and they need to do it quickly. Yeah. Natalie has been moved to this secluded area and she's been being monitored. So Father Quinn asks for volunteers, and of course Anne right away, she wants to do it, and he kind of gives her this look like, better, like you're just watching, like you're not going to actually do anything.
You haven't learned a thing yet.
Right.
So I appreciate your enthusiasm, not the time.
Yeah. So Father Dante and Father Raymond see her, raising her hand, so they get the courage, and, they're, I guess us. And she, the woman of the class, raised her hand. So, they go into the room, and Natalie, she turns her head towards them. Her face has bruises all over it. They start the exorcism, and Natalie says, I can't hear you, and like sticks her fingers all the way through her ears. And then she starts backwards walking up the wall, which is freaking awesome looking. It's so creepy though.
That's great.
The two men, they get scared at this point. So Father Quinn kind of directs them to pray together. So
he even tosses out the Bible verse they're supposed to be doing at this point. Like that, something that I feel is underrated about this film. We'll talk more about it at the end. The acting from our lead cast is great. Absolutely.
Natalie sees Anne through the one-way mirror and just looks at her intently, then puts her hands over her eyes. And this is when burn holes in her hands, like how Jesus Christ was crucified.
She gets the stigmata at this moment, the holes in the hands. Anne has a terrified look on her face. Natalie starts banging her head against the window, saying, let me in. Kind of a throwback to the beginning with her mom on the door. Father Quinn walks in and starts his prayer. Natalie slides across the ground and under her bed. Father Quinn goes to look under the bed. When she pops up on the other side, she pulls him under the bed and bends herself unnaturally to get back up. Anne walks in the room and she's like, Natalie, can you hear me? Like she's talking to Natalie. She's not talking to the demon.
Not talking to the demon, but Natalie herself. Yes.
Natalie, I'm here with you. Natalie, Anne, I'm scared. She falls to the ground and her hair starts going down her throat, choking her. Father Quinn starts his exorcism again as the other guys are trying to pull the hair out of her mouth. This is when a fist pops out of Natalie's mouth. And then Natalie sits up. The hand has come out of her mouth. She's breathing good now. Maybe it's done. They pulled the hair out. The hand is all done. We're good to go now. Exorcism's done.
Hopefully. This is when Father Dante, Father Raymond, and Anne, they're all having a little stress reliever drink, after that chaos.
But you got to tie one on after all that happened.
For sure. Father Dante talks about how he found a picture in Natalie's room, and he thinks it was for him. It was of a pregnant woman, and he goes on to tell his sister she was sexually assaulted and was impregnated, and her sister had an abortion, and she feels really guilty about it.
So he feels like the demon is pretty much just, poking at him now, making fun of him.
So Anne goes to check on Natalie. She asks, how is she doing? Natalie says, I had a dream, and she's describing everything that happened earlier in the day, all that chaos. And Natalie says, I think they were talking to someone. And Natalie's like, who is talking to someone? And Natalie says, the voice inside of me. It tells me things. It promises me things. Even sometimes it shows me bad things.
Yeah. And, she tells Anne, you were there, but you weren't one of the people that were yelling at me. So we go back to, she spoke to Natalie.
Not the demon.
Anne goes to talk to Father Quinn. She knows that Natalie wasn't cleansed. Father Quinn tells Anne that she is going to be sent to the Vatican. Obviously, we talked about earlier, once you get sent to the Vatican, that's bad news. You become classified. Anne wants to help her, and Father Quinn says, if you want to help her, then pray. You are one of the Lord's vessels. That is what you guys are best at, talking about nuns. Your prayer is your strength. Use your strength. Anne starts doing research. Father Dante helps her get to the restricted files by distracting the secretary. So Sister Anne can get into the room where the computer is with all the files on it. Anne's looking through all the files of the terminal people that went to the Vatican. Everyone there is dead except for one. One person got released. She watched the video of the girl named Mila. Mila ran away and her sisters were killed by soldiers during the Holocaust. It doesn't really say it's during the Holocaust, but from what I'm gathering, it's very, very World War II-esque. And, the interview says, Mia, you were cleansed, you were healed. And she said she felt so guilty that she cut part of her face off, and it shows her pulling her face off and revealing it to the camera.
Anne talks to Dr. Peters about how guilty her mother felt for the things she had done to her. We get a flashback of her mother searching for Anne in the house. Anne's kind of hiding. When she finds her, she shows her the comb that she uses, to violently brush her hair. Anne starts running from her. Dr. Peters says, Anne, your mother took her own life. We see Mom on the ground bleeding again in the flashback, and Anne as a little girl kind of looking over her.
We never find out how her mom took her own life.
Yeah.
That's one of the things where we'll talk more about it towards the end of the film, but this is one of the things where I was like, what?
Yeah, I kind of thought that this was going to go
a totally different direction.
Way, but it didn't. So Dr. Peters tells Anne, you need to confront your trauma. This is something that you need to confront head on. They go downstairs. Natalie, she's in a restricted access area at this point, and Anne is asking another sister walking by, why is she, in this restricted? Why can't I get in? And she says, probably because she's being transferred. So Anne tells Father Quinn they can't transfer Natalie because 90% of the transfers are deceased.
That's 90 out of every 100 people that go to the Vatican pass away.
Anne tells Father Quinn a theory of genuine cases where the possessed feel so much guilt and shame that they just let the demon in and take over. They surrender control of their body. And Father Quinn says, if you shun the church to follow your own will, you will walk alone in the dark.
And Anne feels defeated at this point. Then Father Dante, he tells Anne that he overheard everything and asks, what if we could prove to them what's going on here? And he, my sister's possessed. After everything that happened and the shame and the guilt that she felt, I believe that she let the demon in. And let's do an exorcism. Let's show him what's up. So they want to do an unauthorized exorcism, which Anne is not down with at first. She's like, is this really, really what you want to do?
But
and
he
says,
believes in her. Like, he believes the way she talked to Natalie. Like, she's onto something. Like, she knows how to talk to the person and not the demon.
And he says that, you have a gift, and you can help my sister. They go to his mother's home. His mother tells them that his sister's been asleep for 3 days. Father Dante's sister wakes up. Her name is Amelia. And she's saying it won't stop. They will not stop. Anne tells Amelia it can't take power if you don't give it to it. And that's when we get this bombshell.
You know what it feels like to have something growing inside you.
That's a twist. That's very twisty.
And Anne says yes. The demon says, at least this bitch knew who her father was. Shade from the demon. That demon's got shade. Amelia's stomach starts growing and you see something kind of moving around inside. This is when the ceiling fan, it's
the toughest ceiling fan of all time.
It just starts, all the blades just start falling all around the room. Anne tells Amelia, listen to her. Follow me into the pain. We'll go through this together. Confess yourself and you'll be forgiven. Her stomach goes back down and Amelia starts crying. Anne says, Amelia, you are free.
Anne and Father Dante are sitting in the fire escape talking. Anne asks him if the tattoo on his hand is gang related. He says, it used to be. And then Sister Anne tells him, she got pregnant when she was 15. She was too wasted to know who the father was. She was kicked out of her foster home. And that's when she made it to the shelter that was run by the Sisters of St. Mary. They took her in. Father Dante asks, what about the baby? And Anne tells him the sisters arranged for an adoption. She says, I abandoned her. I prayed for forgiveness. She's back in her dorm now, brushing her hair. And what I love about this scene is when she's talking about the baby, I think that it's more like, I'm going to pass this down to my baby. I don't want this thing anywhere near me.
Yeah.
Get it away from me. I'm not ready for her to go through what I went through.
Right.
So now she's brushing her hair with the wooden comb.
She still has that wooden comb.
Which is, a sign of abuse. You're holding on to that. It's a literal, she's holding on to what was hurting her. She's having flashbacks of her mother when she pulls out a hair that's attached in her eyeball. Ugh. Oh my gosh, this scene kills me.
Yes.
And you could see a shadow of someone behind her as she's pulling the hair out of her eyeball. Cardinal Matthews wants to speak with her. He tells her that Father Dante's sister Amelia took her own life last night. He found out about the exorcism. Father Dante comes to her defense, telling him, it was me. I did this. I'm the one that asked her to do this. Anne is very upset. She says, maybe it would be best if I went back to the Sisters of St. Mary's.
Dr. Peters visits her at St. Mary's. She brings her a book about trauma. She tells her, you're on a new path now. She gives her an update on Natalie, and she was released home with her mother, so all is good. Later, Father Dante, he comes to visit Anne, Debbie Downer, and tells her that something happened at school.
Debbie Downer? I gotta be a downer now.
And Natalie suffered a relapse. She was rushed back in an ambulance, and a priest and 2 orderly were murdered.
I want to chime in real quick. As much as I like a lot of what this movie did with its VFX and its practical effects, there's a scene when they're in the ambulance where Natalie lights a cross on fire with her mind. It looks like dog shit. I don't like the CGI in this moment. I have a lot of good things to say about this movie. I also have some bad things. This is one of the things that I felt was really weak, was a lot of the overusage of certain CGI moments like this one. So obviously, if we're going to review a movie and we're going to critique a movie, if we're going to praise it, we got to have the negatives too. And I feel like that was one moment that was a big negative for me when we were watching.
Another Debbie Downer.
I know. Start calling me Father Dante.
So they move Natalie down into the catacombs underneath the school. Father Dante tells her she only has hours, not days. And Anne's like, why are you telling me this? This is when Father Dante, he gives her a rosary, and Anne looks at it and says that she received this when she arrived at St. Mary's.
And I wrapped it around the wrist of my little girl the day I gave her.
So we now find out that Natalie is Anne's daughter.
Didn't see it coming, did you?
The demon is using her to get to me. That's what Anne thinks. She's using my daughter to get to me. and I'm not going to let her suffer for me. Father Dante sneaks Anne into the school. He stole a nun's key card to get into the resort area where Natalie is kept. And I want you guys to look very closely at how shitty it is. He stole this nun's key card. Like, they're going to come to her the next day, like, why did you go down in the catacombs? She's like, oh, what?
I was never down there.
Maybe I'm possessed. So Father Dante, Sister Anne, shame on you for getting that old nun in trouble.
They're just like, oh, sucks to be her. She's old.
Wrong place, wrong time.
So down in the catacombs, the priests, they're praying to Natalie. Natalie's sitting against the wall, and she says, don't act like a stranger. You got my invitation. This is when Anne tells Natalie, let them leave. So she starts forcing off all the lights down there. And then she starts yeeting priests. Father Raymond, Father Raymond was yeeted so fast and far that he hits a wall. And he dies upon impact. Poor Father Raymond.
Yeah.
This is when Natalie gets out of her cell, and she says in her demonic voice, why did you leave me, mommy? And Anne says, you're not Natalie. I know who you are. The demon says, then be honest. Why did you leave her? And she says, I was only 15. And they're like, no, that's not it. What happened to your mother? You couldn't be responsible for another life. Anne says, you know what? You're right. You win, and gives Natalie a hug. She holds the back of her head, and this is when you see the demon transferring from Natalie into Anne.
So the demon finally got what it wanted. It finally got Anne. And Anne let it happen. She got down, she hugged her, and that was her way of saying, fine, take me.
Take me.
Leave my daughter,
right,
and take me.
Father Dante, he grabs Natalie. Anne wakes up, and her eyes are all black. And she gets out, run to Natalie.
She barely, she's not fully turned yet.
Yes.
But she knows.
She knows what's about to happen.
Run.
So run. She's levitating in the air. Father Dante tells Natalie to go hide. And Anne, she starts then running towards them. She's fully demonized at this point. Yeah. And Natalie, Father Dante tells Natalie,
you gotta hide.
Yeah.
You have to hide. And then Anne finds her, but Father Dante pleads with her, let Natalie go. She grabs Natalie, because Father Dante's on the other side of the cell at this point. Mm-hmm. She grabs Natalie and tries to drown her in the holy water. Anne hears her mother's voice telling her to let go. Anne is fighting the demon within, and she herself jumps into the holy water. So it's like a big wishing well.
Yeah.
So she fully submerges herself down in the holy water. She comes out of the water and looks at Natalie, and she's okay. Anne is in the hospital. Natalie and her foster mother come and visit her. Natalie gives her the picture she drew of the train before she leaves. Yeah, of the dog train. Anne gets up and she watches Natalie as she leaves with her adopted mother, which I think is good, because we'll talk about it in a minute. Father Quinn awards Anne with a fellowship in exorcism at the Vatican, so she gets to go to the Vatican. Yeah, first woman ever. Well, not the first woman ever.
Yeah, within
the first woman in the last 7 centuries.
Yes.
And that's one thing she says. Technically you weren't the first. And she's like, well, the first in 7 centuries.
I think that's pretty good.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Father Quinn tells her to be careful. She goes out, she takes a taxi. They're stopped at a light when a woman on the sidewalk is just staring into the taxi at her. And like, Anne's doing the thing where she's like,
like, you looking at me?
Yeah, can I help you?
Take a picture, it lasts longer.
The driver calls her Annie. She looks at him, and when he looks back, the woman is right at her window, and her eyes are completely white. The driver is now in the back seat with her. Anne grabs her cross and puts it towards the driver. He lunges at her, and that's when we cut to credits. So, a couple things throughout the episode I wanted to talk about at the end. One, they really make you feel like Anne killed her mother. Yes,
I definitely felt like that was going to go a different way because, she's standing over, she's bleeding.
And you never see how mom died.
Right.
They never specifically say that she did. They don't specifically say she didn't either. Right. So it's still a possibility that she killed her mom to, protecting herself.
Possibly.
Another thing is I kind of got the feeling that Anne and Natalie were going to end up together. I'm glad that didn't happen. Her adopted mother obviously loved her so much. Not only she's raised her. That's her daughter.
But I mean, it is sad for Anne,
I get that, but Natalie can't be uprooted out of her whole life because Anne's ready now. Natalie has her life, her mother that obviously cares so much about her. She's taken her to the hospital. She's there for her. She's raised her. That's her little girl. So, as always, we are going to give you our ranking of the film. So You want to go first, babe?
Sure. So I'll rank this film 3.5 out of 5. I did enjoy it. Like you said in the beginning, it's not just another Exorcist movie. It has that twist, and I really like a twist. I did kind of call it pretty early on, that's why my rating is down a little bit because of that. I like it when they can really surprise me. But the characters, they're all really good. And you know, it was fun. It was a good movie.
I'm leaning between the 2.5 and 2 3/4. And the reason why, the performances are great. Jackie Byers did amazing in this film. A lot of our main cast was good, and Exorcist type films, supernatural type films, those are my favorite subgenre of horror. I went into this just looking for an Exorcist type movie. That's what I was looking for. You know, The Exorcist, The Exorcism of Emily Rose. Like, that's the type of stuff I was looking for going into this movie. I was pleasantly surprised that it had more depth than that. We got some cases of sexual assault, which I'm not saying is good. Yeah, obviously, I'm not saying it's a good thing.
But I like how they made it differently. Like, you don't talk to the demon, you talk to the person.
Right.
You know, I like how they went about it that way.
Right. There was more depth to this movie than I had thought that there was going to be. And a lot of that hinged on the shoulders of our main Jackie Byers. She was very believable throughout the film. And I'm very excited to see if she can do more horror in the future, like what that holds for her, because she has all the makings of being a great final girl. But, you know, there was just a lot about the movie that I enjoyed. But overall, there was some very slow parts, some very sluggish parts, some bad CGI. When it comes to Exorcist-type movies, I thought it was very, very good. But a lot of it was run-of-the-mill, you know, crab walking, you know, a lot of the stuff we've seen before. When it comes to the Exorcist part of things, it didn't break the mold on anything, which is fine. You don't have to break the mold every time you make a movie. So overall, I'll give it between 2.5 and 2 3/4. Jackie Byers, I'd give a 5. I thought she did great in this film. I can't wait to see what she does in the future. The twist actually got me. I didn't expect a twist.
No.
So,
Neither.
you know, when we find out that she was her mother, you know, I was like, whoa. Right when we found out that she was a party girl when she was young, Ashley was like, I bet Natalie's her mother, or her daughter.
Yeah.
I was like, no, she's not.
I totally called it.
So, of course. But, yeah, so I just want to say I very much enjoyed the film, guys. It is streaming now. It is also available on physical media, so make sure you're picking that up. And until next time, guys, I am Father Ken.
And I'm Sister Ashley.
Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Follow us on social media so you can stay up to date on everything we're doing in the future. But until next time, keep talking horror.
Stay who you are.
And we'll see you guys soon.